So welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to another battle replay, and I think I'm going to be doing this one just a single day after the previous one for obvious reasons. The last one was more about the rants that I went into than the actual battle itself, and you know, it's just been a frustrating time with the game for me. Obviously that replay was something which just made that boil over a little bit, because my own experiences playing the game, I have not had a good close game that I can post up myself that I've been in the past at least 2.5 weeks, and yeah, it's all just a little bit disheartening at the moment, and hopefully that can change, but hopefully this battle will be good. And obviously these ones, this is an RP battle between Umbar and Angmar, and these often end up being a good, reliable source of good replays. So Umbar, of course, are on the defense, and Angmar are on the attack, and both are factions with very powerful heavy infantry, so they should be able to put up a good fight against one another. Umbar certainly have the stronger of the archers between the two, but Angmar also have a few specialty units like trolls, and of course the mighty witches, which can certainly tilt the fight in their favour. And fortunately for them, I mean, dealing with 4 Angmar armies from all sides would be a bit difficult, but this is the fortress type where one side of the fortress, this one, has the moat and the cliffs, which means you know, they're not going to be able to come from this angle or the back. So there is only a few ways into the fortress they will be able to come from, rather than the city maps that we've often seen in the RP, from which all sides can be attacked all at once, and it's quite difficult to deal with. But Umbar should be able to funnel Angmar where they want to go to a certain extent. We will go through the attacking armies first of all, of course, as per usual, and we will start off with Lawmaster Eothad. This is actually a fairly old replay. It was sent to me just under a month ago, so I'm only just getting to it now, so it just goes to show that I'm still running a bit of a backlog. But you know, that's not a sort of thing where I don't want any more replays. Do feel free to send me more, but obviously, you know, it's just a case of, you know, some tend to get buried and I tend to not notice them until a little bit later on. But I always like doing these RP battles, so I have come back to it. So Eothad here is going to be playing as the first Angmar army. He's got some Trolls of Angmar with their 2 blades affixed to their arms, very, very powerful, of course, wading through enemy lines, as are the mighty Trolls of Gundabad as well, with their big spiked clubs. Gives them a lot of punch, but of course they can't be committed too early, because, you know, when you commit the Trolls, that's really a sign that you're going all in, and if they do that too early, Umbar will be able to contain them and utilise their own powerful units to stop them. We have some upgraded Guardians of Kharn which make a very solid front line. Umbar are one of the factions which can do a lot of damage to the Guardians of Kharn on the front line, however. You know, Alcarondas Legion are probably the superior unit between the two, so whereas Angmar can usually have a bit of an advantage in the line infantry, that is probably not going to be the case here, but fortunately it is a siege where they can rely more on numbers, as the Orcs often can. Some Snaga Stalkers here pushing up a ram, of course. There's a free unit which are very much a sacrificial lamb. Angmar Marauders pushing up a siege tower, and then back in behind we have the main body of the army, including Angmar Halberds, more upgraded Guardians of Kharn, some upgraded Witch-Realm Pikemen as well, so a big solid front line here with a bit of AP, some pikes, and some more very powerful line infantry. And then the Blackwatch Legion, of course, the mass pushes, which we haven't actually seen a successful mass push as of yet in 0.97. We've seen a couple of failures, which does go to show they're not the overpowered monsters that people think they are. But the Blackwatch Legion do have a bit of AP on those maces now as well to make them a little bit better in sustained melee, but that's still not really where they want to be. They're a very expensive unit for fairly low combat stats. Really, that pushing ability is what you're buying them for. And then we have the Witch-Realm Blackguard back here, which is not going to be the General, actually, interestingly enough. I wonder where the General is then. Most strange indeed. But yes, the Witch-Realm Blackguard are going to be there, and obviously a very powerful sword and board unit, one of the very best. And then over here with the second Angmar army, who are going to be going up this hill and attacking this wall, which is probably the flattest surface on this fortress that they can attack. We have BMK Overlord of the Dark Lab, got some Snaga Stalkers pushing up another ram, although I don't think that's going to be necessary because there's only one gate over on this side. Once again, upgraded Guardians of Kharn and Witch-Realm Pikemen. I think that's going to be the theme here, because they're a very solid front line if you can get them into position. He does have some archers as well, to be fair, some Snaga archers, just to put some pressure on the defensive lines, but of course Angmar are never really going to be able to skirmish with Umbar effectively. Trolls of Angmar are here, of course, more Angmar Marauders. Over here on this side there are the Blackwatch Legion again, more of a pushing capability, some Trolls of Gundabad, and then way back here, just in case Umbar do sally out, which is possible given all their upper end cavalry, we have the Witch-Realm Inquisitors, very powerful melee cav, of course, and because of their current numbers advantage that they hold over the Alcarondas Faithful, they can definitely claim a bit of an advantage in that particular kaiju fight. Very powerful melee cavalry units there. And then we have Thick Dick, who's going to be playing as another Angmar army. So we have Goblin Band and Snaga Stalkers here on the front, pushing up the ram. Of course, another gate over on this side. Once again, some Trolls of Gundabad and some Trolls of Angmar, so very much going in for the Trolls. Guardians of Khan Doom, we have some more Angmar Marauders, as well as some more Angmar Halberds. Obviously a prime target for all the Umbar Archers, the Halberds and Pikes, but the Pikes at the very least, not upgraded armour this time, just the rusted aesthetic, which I do actually like for Angmar. But they still will, unshielded as they are, they'll still be a very good target for them. We also have the Blackwatch Legion over here, and of course another thing that their big shields do offer, in addition to being able to push through enemy lines, is of course the ability to block a huge amount of arrow fire. Very well armoured and very heavily shielded means that there's no point in trying to shoot them with arrows. They'll be able to absorb that very, very efficiently. We have some Witchers of Angmar, of course. Unsurprising to see at least one player bring the Witchers. Some Witcher-Hound Blackguard over here and some Angmar Marauders. It's actually possible that maybe the Witchers are the General's Bodyguard up here, but they're probably buried within the infantry so you can't see them, which is exactly what you want your Witchers to be doing. And then the final Angmar army, we have Frodo, and I'm imagining it's going to be relatively similar here. More Guardians of Khan Doom, more Blackwatch Legion, Angmar Marauders, and then we have some Snaga as well, some Goblin Band also, a few Spears obviously, some more Witcher-Hound Blackguard, so no hammers this time around. We also have some Trolls of Angmar and Trolls of Gundabad again. And then way back here, he does actually have a unit which is unique to his army, a couple of units of Witcher-Hound Scourge Raiders, a unit which throw a few axes into the fray before charging into melee themselves. A little bit vulnerable to arrow fire, their armour is okay but not brilliant, and they don't have a shield of course, but in melee they can do quite a lot of damage with those dual axes. But yeah, so interesting enough, they have the Prec trait of course, which is the source of much debate at the moment, as it always will be as long as it remains, because it is quite a contentious mechanic. But regardless, it is here for now, and of course the Witcher-Hound Scourge Raiders should be decent here, but not a lot of AP actually on the Angmar armies. I was expecting to see a couple of Orc fellas at the very least, because they're nice disposable AP, maybe even a couple of Hammer Guard as well for the General's Bodyguards, but alas no. On the defence we have Tundra's Fox, who's going to be playing as one of the Umbar armies. I wonder who else. I know Maximus Decimus Meridius is another one, and then there must be at least one more, Enxfitz. So there we are, those are the three Umbar players. Having a look through the settlement quite quickly, I imagine we know what we're going to see here. Lots of Alcarondas Legion, of course, the backbone of this Umbar defence, because they can definitely lay down a marker in the melee fight against what Angmar have to offer. We also have the Balaketh Shield Bearers and Axe Guard, so that's a lot of good AP, which will also be very useful against the upper end Umbar Angmar stuff. The Balagai Pikes will also be able to form up a phalanx. They aren't as good as the Witcher-Hound Pikemen, admittedly, but everywhere else Umbar seem to be able to lay down a big advantage in melee. Of course, we've got some Castlemir's Rangers on a defensive siege like this, absolutely vital. The Gondorian Towers are here, so Umbar clearly have occupied their old enemies' cities. Corsair Crossbows as well. The stopping power on crossbows is a must-have in a siege like this. Narina Iris Sentinels and Shield Bearers are over here also. Some more Axe Guard, albeit without the armour upgrade, these lads. The Shield Bearers actually do have it. I'd be more tempted to give it to the Axe Guard, to be honest with you, because the shields can do a lot of the damage, or a lot of the damage absorption for the Shield Bearers, whereas the Axe Guard have got really nothing else. Balagai Footmen are here, of course, just some basic spears on the front line. Put them into shield wall and they should be able to hold for some time. Not a lot of damage on them though, admittedly. Even Angmar Marauders will probably be able to take a decent chunk out of them. Balagai Pikemen are here as well, also some Corsair infantry. They only have a few volleys, but they do act as decent light infantry when all is said and done as well. They've got the armour upgrade to make them a little bit more resilient. More footmen, some more archers as well down here on the front. More Corsair infantry, Balagai Pikemen and archers. We have some more Sentinels, some more Alcarondas Legion, Harbingers of Castamir, of course, a very, very powerful unit. Castamir himself with them. And with their two-handed swords, it would be interesting to see actually who would win in a fight between them and the Witcher-Hound Blackguard. You know, most of the time you'd give that to a two-handed sword unit, but the Blackguard are so good that that would be a very close fight indeed. Of course, we're unlikely to see that fight in a vacuum here. There's going to be other stuff trying to get involved, like maybe the Castamir's Rangers ripping through stuff with their body piercing. More Alcarondas Legion, a lot more Alcarondas Legion, in fact, than I think most of Maximus Decimus Meridius' army is back here, including some of Dunheim Shield Guard, obviously upper end Numenorian Spearmen, very, very resilient indeed. And a Catapult, which is going to be an interesting addition as well, so it looks as though that's going to be the final stand, but the Catapult can of course get itself into a good position on this map, and with Angmar's overall lack of archers, they won't be able to snipe it out either, so it'll be a very interesting time indeed. But without further ado, let's begin. And immediately you can see, of course, the arrow towers, this being a sort of standard settlement. There are going to be a lot of these towers which are going to be able to assist Umbar on the defence, and they will need it because all the time I will be very tempted, unless there's very extenuating circumstances and the settlement is extremely easy to defend. Very rarely will I give the initial advantage to the defenders when they're outnumbered by an army, and certainly in the case where it's 4 Angmar armies crashing down on the defenders, because they are going to be very good at this sort of thing. Maybe not quite as much AP as you would like to see against an Umbar force like this, but overall their army is solid enough and has enough damage dealers that you would expect they should be just fine. Umbar, however, do have the ability to stand for a long time and defend. They've got a lot of very nice infantry. Even their more basic units like the footmen serve a very important purpose with their shield wall ability. That will certainly help to try and stop the inevitable mass pushes that Angmar are going to be engaging in with all the units of Blackwatch Legion that they have brought to the field today. As the Snagastalkers continue to move forward, I didn't see any siege weaponry for Angmar on the assault here either, which means they won't be able to knock down any walls, which is a pretty big deal. On a settlement like this, one of the things you can do to make the defenders very uncomfortable is to knock 3 or 4 holes in one side of the settlement. And that's going to be far too many choke points for them to guard with extreme force. You know, 1 or 2 units on each one is the most you can expect, and Angmar would be able to ruthlessly expose that. Corsair infantry starting to open up, but of course, again, they only have, when their unit is of full strength, I think they only have 5 full volleys, and of course, as you would expect, their arrows are not exactly the highest in terms of damage. But of course, much like the Lake Town infantry from Dale, the arrows are more of an added bonus. Their primary function is as light infantry that you can use. The kills that you get with your arrows are meant more as a little bonus, and also to really nail down the fact that Umbar are a faction which are very much at home when they're skirmishing with the enemy. Meanwhile, a bit of a race to get to the gate here between BMK and Aethad, but it does look as though Aethad is going to win that, interestingly enough, and then this gate will of course fall. Gates on either side of the settlement. It is a fairly large area for Umbar to defend, and they will need to, and I'm glad to see that Maximus Decimus Meridius is sending down some of his infantry, because they will need additional help to hold the outer defences if that is what they intend to do. Some Corsair infantry over here without the armour upgrade, this unit, and that's obviously very light armour indeed when they don't have the armour upgrade, and you know, they're about as good as you would expect in melee. Sort of very much a militia tier swordsman in melee, maybe a little bit better than that. Militia tier in the same way that Eastron clansmen are, perhaps. Only with not quite as good armour. Guardians of Kharn now heading up the siege towers. Reinforcements may be a little bit far away here from this army over here. But just an initial probe, and to be fair, the Guardians of Kharn would be able to very easily defeat Corsair infantry, so the Corsair infantry are actually going to, I think, pull away from this. Maybe a few more reinforcements are going to be on the way also. More Corsair infantry still firing, actually, so they still have a bit of ammunition. Looks like they've just ran out. They pulled out their scimitars and target shields. And over here you can see that the fortifications are already doing their job here, as the arrow towers setting one of the siege towers of this particular army ablaze. And you can see there that the orc style of siege tower doesn't have a sort of crumbling animation for it, so it sort of reverts back to the standard medieval 2 siege towers. We can actually see over here that there is the initial melee engagement happening over here between BMK's Guardians of Kharn and the Alcarondas Legion. Guardians of Kharn actually able to clear out a pretty decent spot on the wall over here, but when it comes down to just pure melee ability, you would back the Alcarondas Legion here. The Guardians of Kharn have got more men in the unit, which is fairly key. But particularly with the assistance of the arrow towers, the Alcarondas Legion should win this fight, really. Unless there's any shenanigans going on with armour upgrade, well, not armour upgrades, attack upgrades, I should say. Down here, meanwhile, the Snagastalkers are going to be the first ones in through the gate. This fight is probably going to go about as well as you would expect. A combination of Belagire pikemen and Balaketh shield bearers are easily going to be able to hold back the Snaga and probably break them very, very quickly. But of course, this is just the first wave. There are plenty more orcs that can be sent forward. Over here you can see the upgraded Guardians of Kharn, which will be even tougher for the Alcarondas Legion to take down, to be fair. They're not armour-piercing after all, the Legion. Yeah, the Shield Bearers really pushing back hard. The Blackwatch Legion are coming in. Interestingly enough, the maces on the Shield Bearers should be pretty good against the Blackwatch Legion, but I'm not really sure if pushing through at this point is going to yield much results, because the line is quite thick, albeit not with a huge amount of men. I mean, it could work. Alcarondas Legion getting down off the walls to assist. Balaketh Axguard are also over here. So it's going to be a fight on the walls for quite some time, I would imagine. Over here, the Corsair infantry Kind of surrounded on all sides by Guardians of Kharndoom, being supported by Alcarondas Legion as well. And you can see now also that archers are starting to get involved. The Belagai archers shooting into the backs of the Guardians of Kharndoom, which is good positioning for Mengsvitz. And they will need to do this, because honestly over here, the manoeuvring has maybe favoured Angmar a little bit here. Umbar should still be able to make Angmar pay for this, but they have managed to clear a big spot on the wall. Reinforcements can flow in at will at this point. They're not eager to go in through the gate though, with all the footmen and pikemen ready to close the jaws on them. Interestingly enough, Angmar Marauders going in over here would have been better to send some Guardians of Kharndoom over here, I think, because they'd have been able to easily beat Corsair Infantry, but as it is, Corsair Infantry with the support of those towers either side. Looks like the Angmar Marauders are going to break off pretty fast here. Meanwhile, more burning siege towers over here, more Angmar Marauders, and more, well, that is just Angmar Marauders up on this side of the line. So Umbar are going to very easily be able to hold on to this section of wall. The Angmar Marauders are not going to be enjoying their time in melee against the Alcarondas Legion, backed up by the Corsair Infantry, more burning wood. Guardians of Kharndoom at this point surrounded by not only Alcarondas Legion but also Belagai footmen. There goes the crumbling of the siege tower. Over here, Eothab really trying to do some damage quite quickly. You can see there the Trolls of Gundabad getting in through the gate as well. They have managed to sort of secure a little bit of a position where they can mass up some men within the gate. The Trolls of Gundabad going to move up to assist the Guardians of Kharndoom up here, and that will be enough to secure this section of wall as well, killing those Alcarondas Legion. The Trolls going to be able to deal just too much damage, although the Trolls might not escape that unscathed. And Eothab and BMK Overlord here really going in hard on this gate, and it's actually bearing fruit here. I think Umbar were maybe not expecting a push of this size this early, and they're sort of scrambling to try and contain it. Having said that, the Castamir's Rangers are in a good position to take advantage of that huge blob, and I can only imagine Tundra's Fox's Castamir's Rangers are going to finish this game with a lot of kills based on the position that they are in. Corsair Crossmen are also in a good position to lay down some support up on the walls here. You can see that they've already taken a huge toll on this unit of Guardians of Kharndoom. Still the arrow towers thudding away as well. They get kills very, very slowly, to be fair, the arrow towers, but they can still make an important difference. Angmar over here also being aggressive, which is good to see. I mean, Angmar can't really afford to be a faction which takes the slow and steady approach in this situation. It's very clear that they don't have a huge amount of skirmishers, and all of their power lies in their brute strength. So they're going to come forward here and try and break the back of the Umbar defence pretty quickly. They're having some success in places, but it all depends really on how many losses they take doing this. If they take too many, then they won't have the ability to follow through to the town centre. But if they are able to crush through this Umbar defence quickly, which over here you can see the Trolls of Angmar have been able to just push through, and the Umbar defence is very thin at this point. Reinforcements from Maximus Decimus Meridius is on the way. Some Belagai footmen to try and stop the advance of Angmar, spearheaded here by the Trolls of Angmar, and they are already into the Castamir's Rangers. And to be honest with you, Belagai footmen are not really the ideal answer to trolls like this, because they're not going to do damage quickly enough. The Corsair Fencers are a different matter, however. They should be able to deal damage quite quickly to a unit like this with their dual rapiers. But they definitely need these Castamir's Rangers to get out of melee with the trolls. They need them to continue firing. You can see here that BMK's army's got some Snaga archers heading around here. Victorious over here against the Angmar Marauders, as you would expect. But over here you can see more Angmar Marauders climbing up onto the walls. Frodo getting his siege towers into position, and he is going to be sending over reinforcements to this side, and they should be able to secure this part of the settlement over here, Angmar, with more Angmar Marauders heading over. And presumably the Snaga archers are looking to get up onto the wall so they can start bombarding the Umbar positions as well. The Guardians of Kharndoom still fighting hard for the walls with the trolls up here. I mean, that's a lot of orcs. The Corsair infantry is on the verge of routing, although they've got nowhere to rout, so they'll probably just end up fighting to the death up here. But yeah, light infantry such as that. It says heavy infantry, but believe me, they are anything but heavy infantry. Even with the armour upgrade, they are barely above militia tier. Useful as a unit, but certainly not designed to take that level of punishment. The Angmar Marauders over here were killed by a combination of the infantry and the towers. Over here, though, it is worth saying that these arrow towers are probably racking up a bit of a kill count at this point, purely because Thick Dick has got a lot of his units just sort of waiting in reserve. But I think the time is approaching where he needs to just sort of start committing stuff like Blackwatch Legion And maybe his Witcher Realm Pikemen as well to sort of solidify a position within the gate as well. He is sending forward his Snaga Stalkers as a little initial force, but I think he's going to need something a little more than that. As soon as he does that, they will then have a launching ground to really secure the lower section of the settlement and force Umbar back up the hill towards the town centre. There's still a lot of these units sort of hidden within these streets. Balagar Archers still firing away, Balakath Axguard. I think it's over here where Angmar are having the most success, however. The Trolls of Angmar are finally starting to fall away. But you can see their Corsair Infantry are fighting. Angmar Marauders' victory seems certain. You can see there the Snaga Archers actually firing over the wall into the rear Uldia. I think that's probably a sign that the Rangers are shooting into that big blob. Regardless, Frodo's reinforcements, getting those siege towers up onto this uncontested section of the city was a very good idea, and his Angmar Marauders have made sure that they are here to stay. Maybe the Snaga Archers would be better served getting up onto the walls, but they're firing, and they've got a good position to fire into the back of that Umbar force over there, to be fair. Oof. Yet again, we have probably more Castamir's Rangers firing in there. Balagar Archers certainly are with flaming ammunition, but this is what I was talking about. You can see now that he is, Vic is starting to really commit forwards through the gate as well. The Trolls of Angmar and his units that were up on the wall also assisting to try and break the Umbar forces that are here. Umbar are going to be able to get a lot of kills doing this, but Angmar can absorb those casualties, you would think, and maybe even break the Umbar defences. You can see here moving forward some Alcarondas Legion, trying to stop yet more reinforcements, as there were still some Umbar forces in this street over here. And again, we have a straight up fight between the Alcarondas Legion and the Guardians of Khan Doom. Two highly rated units of line infantry. Although the Alcarondas Legion, as I said, should be able to win that. Even with the armour upgrade, I don't think the Guardians of Khan Doom can do enough damage to keep pace with the Alcarondas Legion. Their defensive values, armour and shields, are very powerful, but when it comes to just dealing outright damage, the Guardians of Khan Doom do lag behind some of the upper, sort of the higher tier units of line infantry, like the Alcarondas Legion. The main downside to them, you can see here, Angmar have well and truly secured this street at this point. Angmar doing what they do best and really flexing their muscles when it comes to just really pushing forwards in force. The Witcher Realm Inquisitors coming forward to help with finishing off what little remains of Umbar over here, as Alcarondas Legion, 43 of them, are still all up in this mess. But there's still a lot of Umbar to fight their way through, you can see over here. So again, it all comes down to how many losses Angmar is taking as they make their way through the settlement, and how much Umbar can make them pay. Still, of course, those units of crossbows, and the fact that they only have really a few units of Snaga Archers dotted throughout their many armies here, Angmar. They don't really have a good way to skirmish with those Corsair crossbows, so their primary weakness that they often have to watch out for is something they don't really need to concern themselves with this time, from an Umbar perspective. Now with some Angmar Marauders assisting them, the numbers are going to be too much here, I think, for the Alcarondas Legion, fighting bravely. Looks like they're actually going to get some support here from another unit of Alcarondas Legion. I would kind of be tempted to just retreat at this point. Yeah, and I would say the Angmar have definitely gone about this in the right way so far. They are losing their Trolls. Ooh, and here come the Witchers, poking inside the settlement and getting a nice hit there onto the Balagar Footmen and Pikemen. Not the most elite units that you can go after, but still, when a blob like that is in a position such as that, you have to take it, and Engsvit's caught napping a little bit there. That is something you always have to watch out for. Always need to try and keep track of the Witchers. It's easier said than done in a match like this. Like, chaos was reigning earlier on in this fight. Sort of trying to play whack-a-mole with all the positions that Angmar are trying to attack is one thing, and then trying to look for the Witchers as well is difficult. But if you do lose track of them, that is the sort of thing that can happen. And now, Balagar Footmen and Pikemen are not really ideally suited to fight Trolls either. Trolls are very good at breaking pike lines, and the damage of the spears is not going to be sufficient to do much damage to the Trolls at all. The Trolls are going to try and fight their way through to the Umbar Archers, which they have been able to somewhat. And now forward come the Naaru Sentinels as well. Some Goblin Band up on the walls, although once again, this unit of Corsair Infantry is probably going to be able to hold out against Goblin Band. So they've certainly done their part for for Umbar's cause this time. Yet more orcs are sort of levying themselves towards the gate. There is still more reinforcements that Umbar can commit forward, and they're not just blobbing up because they know that the witches are present. So that's wise. Again, I certainly wouldn't have committed forward the Nari and Iru Sentinels against the Trolls, because as I said, Trolls are going to be good against the Pikes. The Nari and Iru Sentinels are very good Pikes, and to be fair, the Trolls are maybe overextending themselves a little bit, but the rest of the Umbar forces that are in front of them are routing. It's only a matter of time before support comes their way. The Casimir's Rangers are in an ideal position to shoot Angmar as they move up the hill. Balagar Archers also getting themselves into position. Ooh, dear. Frame rate dipping. That can only mean that Rangers are shooting somewhere on the field of battle. Over here, meanwhile, more reinforcements are being committed over here. More Alcarondas Legion, Pikes, and Balakath Axguard. And you can see there that the crossbows are trying to shoot in there as well. They don't necessarily have the best angle here, but it is such a big blob that the crossbows are probably not going to be able to resist trying to shoot into it. Don't know how successful they're going to be, though. More Balagai pikemen are over here, and to be fair, Angmar trying to push up the hill here, but they're actually going to be surrounded. Engsvit's coming across. The Witch Realm Inquisitors are here. Although they are going to charge right into Balagai footmen. They should do some damage off the charge, to be fair, but you know, they are spears. That's not really where the Witch Realm Inquisitors want to be. Basic though they may be, that's exactly the job that spears will enjoy undertaking. Angmar halberds marching in. It is possible as well that they could surround Angmar. The Alcarondas Legion is sort of cutting this initial vanguard force from Angmar off, but I don't know, with Trolls of Gundabad running around, there are the Rangers, I think, firing into the Angmar halberds, which will be a very happy hunting ground for them. Unshielded, lightly armoured, relatively speaking. The Trolls are in here. This actually is probably pretty good for Umbar, though. The Trolls are in here against Balakath Axguard, and they're exactly the sort of unit you want against Trolls. High damage, as well as the armour piercing being very useful against the more heavily armoured Angmar Trolls. So I think that's probably better for Umbar than they were initially fearing, I think, because there's a lot of orcs now held up on this fairly elite position that Umbar have set up. The problem is, of course, that Angmar could just punch through and surround them, although there are crossbows over here that they probably won't want to deal with, I think. Yes, there are. And so far, it looks as though these Snaga trying to skirmish with the enemy, but I mean, the Nari and Iru Sentinels are so heavily armoured and they have those shields that, unlike most pikes, they can probably withstand this very easily, particularly with how low tier the Snaga archers are. Balakath's shield bearers have got a good shield on them as well. The Corsair infantry are the most disposable unit in the Umbar armies today. So I mean, at the very least, Angmar are getting clear shots with their archers, which does mean they will be able to get some kills with them, but really I would be trying to target down the Corsair crossbows if I was able with them, because they represent a huge threat which can be easily dealt, well, more easily dealt with archers. And now you can see over here, Angmar are going to be flooding in here, trying to surround this particular position, and it's only a unit of Balagai pikes which are standing in the way. They're going to need the support of the Alcarondas Legion if they're going to stop the Trolls of Gundabad as they collide with the Umbar pikemen. They're also going to receive some backup from some Snaga Stalkers, which, honestly, no, Snaga Stalkers may not be the last word in terms of quality, but that's the only support the Trolls will need to bash their way through this particular defensive position. We'll see when the defenders are able to notice that. Obviously, it's impossible to notice these things immediately in a siege situation, but how quick you can react is perhaps the difference between victory and defeat here. The Alcarondas Legion, which were coming down here to try and surround this force, are now going to be destroyed, but they did manage to do some damage to the Orcs on the approach, which is going to be good for Umbar as we move forward. Witch Realm Scourge Raiders are also moving forward now as well from Frodo, so a lot of his army is now within the walls. Most of the Angmar forces at this point, you can see that this is pretty much all that remains outside of the walls. I think over here everything is now inside. A few units of perpetually routing stuff over here, but yeah, everything from Eothad and BMK is definitely within the walls. The Balakath Axguard being committed forward, performing a vital service for Umbar in this battle so far by taking down these Trolls. They're definitely one of Umbar's best options against Trolls because of their high damage and their armour piercing. Doing a very good job here. You can see now that Angmar have managed to break through. But they're going to have to go through direct fire from the Castamir's Rangers. So yet again, Tundra's Fox's Rangers able to get a few good volleys there right through the advancing Angmar force. They are going to need to send something to stop them, however, otherwise they will be able to surround this little force which is trying to take down the trolls of Gundabad. I think they are going to be able to as well. There's Balakith's shield bearers on station that they can move forwards, and they can hold for a decent amount of time. These Corsair infantry are very depleted at this point. The primary victims of the Snaga archers. Not really much over here other than Snagas initially. Then you get back further into the corner and you can see where most of these orcs are, just biding their time, waiting for their allies on the other side to start making some headway before committing what's left of their armies, because they of course were very aggressive early on and they don't want to charge right into the guts. Oh, and there go the Angmar Marauders, routing immediately. Actually, the Angmar force there may be a little bit stretched, needed to be a little bit more grouped together, and the trolls, they're going to be forced back here by a combination of Alcaron Best Legion and Balakith Axguard. Back over here, however, this solitary unit of pikemen, there's surely not much life left in them. They're getting hammered in the back by trolls, and from the front the Snaga are occupying their attention, although the trolls are actually dying off at this point. Their hit points gone after their encounter with the Balakith Axguard, and they are going to die. So Umbar actually able to force Angmar back, still able to hold some of these lower streets, which is impressive. It does go to show Umbar's strength when it comes to their infantry, because not any faction would be able to withstand Angmar like this. They would have to make much more use of skirmishers and the like, which Umbar obviously have, but other factions against Angmar would be more reliant on their skirmishers. Definitely one of the infantry-based factions which can try to contest these fights. Balagai, Pikemen and Alcaron Das Legion holding down this corner of the settlement. There are still trolls active on the field, but many of the trolls at this point are dead, to be fair. Umbar have been able to weather that particular storm, but they are still yet to deal with Witch-Realm Blackguard units and of course Witchers, who are over here, loitering with intent. More Blackguard back here. Scourge Raiders moving in, of course, with their own projectiles. More Blackwatch Legion, which can try to push through certain defences. And of course, as I was saying for Angmar, how many losses they take is pretty key. The same is also true for Umbar. If they take too many losses trying to hold these lower portions of the settlement, eventually Angmar will be able to break the back of their defence in one position and then just sort of wrap up the defences elsewhere. You can tell that Umbar have sort of captured this settlement and installed some very nice nooses and gibbets to sort of really add to the old Gondorian aesthetic. Here you can see another assault coming down this way. Trolls of Angmar moving forward. Snaga archers on the front initially engaging, as well as Angmar Marauders. I think Ayathad and BMK sense that they need to start pressurising these defences as well, otherwise their allies are going to pay the ultimate price. The announcer still fancies Angmar's chances, and as I said at the start, you would always back Angmar, I think, in this situation where they have an extreme numbers advantage. The Witch-Realm Scourge Raiders are chanting. I don't think that they're going to be able to easily break Balakith's shield bearers, though, to be honest with you. Especially not when the only foe they're currently engaged in melee with are the Angmar Marauders. The shield bearer is going to be very comfortable there with their plate and scale mail. Scourge Raiders should be able to put up more of a fight against them in melee, though, with their dual axes. Speaking of axes, Balakith Axguard and upgraded Corsair infantry coming forward. So once again, the Axguard colliding with the trolls, and the trolls are going to need some support, and there is the catapult bombarding Angmar as they move forward, and there are the Corsair infantry and the Castamir's Rangers as well. Corsair infantry doesn't have a lot of ammunition as well, naturally, but they will still be able to do a pretty decent amount of damage, and when they do run out of ammunition they can charge down into melee to lend their support. And of course there is the Castamir's Rangers, who are going to be ripping right along the length of that Angmar force. More Angmar trolls are moving forward at this point, however, and this could be a fairly key moment in this fight, because while Angmar are taking losses along this road, Angmar are about to break through over here, and they'll be able to hit this defence in the side. I think the shield bearers see that as well, so they're going to try and form up a defensive line on this road, but that is only still one unit. I think they will need the backup of some Corsair infantry as well. yeah, Umbar definitely see that, and they're going to try and fall back to this position over here. So that's good battlefield awareness from Umbar, because if they just stayed where they were, that Angmar force could have been absolutely vital in smashing their way through the Umbar defences. So they may take a few losses on the retreat, but it's unavoidable at this point. This defence over here is still standing very firm. The Umbar pikemen, in unison with some of their archers that are out of ammunition, with their bucklers and swords now being pulled out. Yeah, the Guardians of Kharn, they're simply not here in enough force to make any sort of inroads. But to be fair, Angmar, all they really need to do is just sort of keep up the pressure on this side, because it's going to be elsewhere where they make their gains, and by elsewhere, I of course mean over here. Corsair crossbowmen now starting to fire, as well as the Rangers. The duo of Umbar skirmishers that are going to be very vital if they are going to win this fight. Yeah, and you can see here that a combination of Blackwatch Legion and the remaining trolls for Angmar pushing through. The defence was not substantial enough to withstand the Blackwatch Legion this time. Corsair crossbowmen doing damage, yet more dregs of the old Angmar forces moving forward. They're just sending everything they can from this side over here, because now is the opportunity they've been waiting for. If they can make this moment in the battle count, then they should go on to win this fight, to be honest. I didn't see any Corsair Blackguards from Umbar, actually, which is interesting. They are another unit with the prep trait, but they have got, you know, a mighty 10 missile damage. Balagire archers are here. Alcarondas Legion. Down over here, Harbingers of Casimir. So Umbar are going to be completely victorious over here in this corner of the settlement, which is good for them, because they are going to need yet more men to head over to the town centre to help defend it, I think. Harbingers of Casimir pursuing. They need to keep something over here, of course, because there are still units waiting to be committed. A lot of units, actually, from Unthrono. But still some Angmar halberds sort of turning around. There's still actually some Alcarondas Legion after being pushed through. Some of them survived, and they should actually be able to kill these Snaga. It's a bit of a chaotic fight, actually, this. Less of a line battle and more just of a skirmish. Several duels happening in the streets of this settlement. Meanwhile, Witchram Inquisitors trying to force their way through. So yeah, a lot of the high mass units from Angmar at this point trying to push through, including the cavalry. Well, I mean, that was a bit of unfortunate friendly fire there from the catapult. The Blackwatch Legion managed to push quite a long way in, but at this point they have isolated themselves a little bit. The Angmar support is lagging a little bit further behind them. And they will be able to be dealt with by Narun, Iron Guard and Corsair Infantry. They're trying to push their way through still, but yeah, you can see this is the downside to the Blackwatch Legion. When they push too far in, they just don't have the melee abilities to look after themselves. So that is going to be it for the Blackwatch Legion, I would think. Another unit of them is trying to push through, but yeah, they're depleted enough at this point that their job is most certainly done. So Angmar have forced the defence back, but they have not broken it just yet. Do Angmar have the manpower to do that again? We shall see. A Dunheim Shield Guard moving forward as well, a very good unit for holding the line. Not, again, as spears, they're not going to be the most damaging for a unit of their cost, but they are going to be difficult to break down. And considering the trolls are on their last legs as well, it's not necessarily the worst thing. Of course, their crossbows moving in, as well as some more Alcarondas Legion. Umbar at this point are starting to pull back, so despite being victorious over here, they know that they can't really continue to hold this area. They need to try and make the defence as compact as possible. More arrow towers doing their job, whittling down the Angmar halberds as they move forward. Still a lot of Alcarondas Legion to make their way through. Still that catapult, still active. Still more Harbingers, still more Rangers as well, sort of in a position on the hill over there. Could be that we see the town centre itself be the final battleground. Still the Corsair Infantry and all of those Black Numenorian units, which I believe are all locked morale as well then, which is a sign that they are going to stand and fight to the bitter end. Still these trolls are doing their thing, and you know, there was a huge concentration of Angmar trolls in this battle. All of the attacking armies had both of the heavily armoured trolls. That's a total of 8 very powerful troll units that the defenders have had to deal with, but I think they are finally coming to the end of the trolls at this point. So Umbar have done well to stay in the game under that sort of scrutiny from Angmar. Still a lot of men coming forward, and this pretty much is going to be the entirety of the force that they have remaining over here that they had in reserve. I think there's a lot of Witch Realm pikemen over there. BMK Overlord primarily over here with that force. And the same can be true of Frodo over on this side. I imagine that he's going to be getting his force in here, which he is. Less units over here, to be fair, than there are going up the hill on the other side. There are the Witchers, and they're going to be at the mercy of the Witchers here. I think once again Umbar are a little bit guilty of forgetting that the Witchers existed. They set up a very nice line there, but that was exactly the sort of thing that the Witchers were going to enjoy facing off against. The Belagire Archers will probably try and shoot them. But again, that sort of damage is the sort of damage which Umbar are going to scarcely be able to afford to take at this point in the battle. Belagire Archers are going to try and hold them back. Here come the Witch Realm Inquisitors, and you can see here where the defences have started to buckle. This is where the attackers can really make their advantage felt, as we often see in a siege battle of this type. The Witch Realm Inquisitor is going to be able to get in behind here, and there's nothing. Well, I say that there are pikemen here, which some of the Witch Realm Inquisitors got caught on, but they are going to be able to get into the Belagire Archers and stop them from shooting, which will, of course, allow Angmar to continue their advance through the settlement. Alcarondas Legion pulling back. I think at this point Umbar very much are going to be reliant on a single choke point to try and hold, and they're going to be reliant on catapults and rangers to be their saviours in this battle, because if it comes down to sheer manpower, I think Angmar just have a little bit too much left for Umbar. The Trolls are finally coming to the end of their lifespan though, and to be fair, over here, I mean, it's mostly Angmar Marauders. And you would kind of back Adunai Shield Guard and Nirun Royal Guard to hold this line indefinitely. The problem that they will have, though, is I don't think Umbar are going to be able to hold this crossroads over here. Maybe they will. The Witchers coming forward once again. The Belagire Archers have been caught out, and they are ultimately going to be destroyed. There's no way that they're going to be able to stand up in melee against this kind of unit. Blackwatch Legionnaires. Scourge Raiders also in close proximity. That unit of Blackwatch Legion being saved for later, which is good. Frodo also has his Witchers. So 2 units of Witchers here. It's going to be a key factor in this battle. You can see here that another volley was sent into this unit of Alcarondas Legion, the Green Fire, singeing many of the professional Umbaran soldiers. To be fair though, I mean, they need to be careful, because if the Witchers come into range of the Corsair crossbowmen, they will be cut down very quickly. Here we can see the Witch Realm Scourge Raiders. They do throw their ammunition and then charge into melee. I'm sure that what Frodo is going to be trying to do is to try and counteract the Prec trait to an extent by having them throw and then retreating them and having them throw again. It is micro-intensive. It's the sort of thing you can't really do on a field battle where everything's happening very quickly. But considering this is a very simple line battle, they will probably be able to do it, to be honest. There we can see that they are future-proofing Umbar, getting back into position. There is another road around the back over here, although I'm not sure whether this one is actually traversable. There was at one point an invisible wall over here, but it doesn't look like that's the case anymore. The Witch Realm Inquisitors are going to be able to pass through here. And so Umbar are going to have to set up a defence from this angle as well. More angles of attack is the last thing Umbar really wants to deal with, but I mean, it is only 2, and if you really wanted to, you could just set up a single line here. But of course, at this point, this front line is going to be utterly surrounded. Not much left over here, to be fair. So the Adunai Shield Guard and the Nirun Royal Guard, if their intent was to save these units, they should have retreated them a long time ago. As it is, they're just going to have to accept the fact they're going to have to stand and fight to the death. Blackwatch Legion victory seems certain. The AP is certainly going to help them here, but what's really going to help them, of course, is the fact that they're going to be fighting units which are utterly surrounded and cut off from any kind of support. As I said, though, I think these are the sort of Umbar units which are locked morale. The Black Numenorians, the upper end Black Numenorians, and they may all be spearmen, but they will stand and fight to the bitter end, and every kill is going to count in this kind of battle. There is the Umbar catapult, though, ripping through some of their own men, to be fair, which they can scarcely afford, but also doing a good amount of damage to these Witch Realm Scourge Raiders as well. What have we over here? Witches of Angmar moving in. Witch Realm Inquisitors loitering over here as well. Some Blackguard. Some Pikemen also. You can see there that the Umbar catapult hitting one of its own buildings and setting it ablaze. Still some Alcarondas Legion left alive over here, which is making life a little bit more difficult for Angmar. Whole units of 62 halberds are starting to rout off, which is unfortunate from their point of view. You can see over here, yeah, and the locked morale is definitely helping Umbar here, because they're holding up this huge force, buying time for their defences in the town centre. But it is a big force that they're going to have to deal with. BMK sending forward pretty much its entire force. There's some from Aethad down there as well. That's pretty much it, though. Again, Angmar certainly have a numbers advantage going here into the late game, but a lot of it is pikes and halberds. They do also have the Witches and the Blackguard, which is a very key factor. But the Rangers and the Catapult could be vital here. And let's not forget as well, 3 units of Harbingers, some crossbows. But I think what Umbar are going to have to do is just form up a single line, hope that it holds, and then hope that the Catapult, crossbows and Rangers can do the business. And if that line is over here, that's not where they want it to be. They need it to be further back so their skirmishers can get involved. Having said that, these Scourge Raiders are sort of grinding themselves up against the Alcarondas Legion here. So Umbar will accept these free kills, I'm sure, as we head in to the final phases of this fight. The siege has reached its final defensive point. Still these Black Numenorians fighting to the bitter end. But ultimately they are going to be swamped and destroyed. And again, I would still most certainly back Angmar at this phase of the fight. Are those Rangers firing? They are, but I'm not sure if they've got... No, they don't really have... They don't really have an angle for me. Yeah, they're shooting right up into the air. Look. Well, I say that. That is pretty vital. The Witchers coming in here and doing a bit of a drive-by on the Umbar defences. There's nothing more frustrating than that if you're a defender and the attacker is sort of poking in and out with skirmishers. It's one of the most frustrating things you can experience. It is, of course, an entirely viable tactic, but especially when it's the Witchers because of the extreme amount of damage they can do. You know, it's just something which Umbar are going to have to deal with here. I mean, you know, knowing that the Witchers are going to be present, I'm not sure whether they're going to be able to withstand that kind of casualty again, though. I would say another volley like that, and it's going to be all over for them. Witch Realm Pikemen are there. Alcarondas Legion, they're going to be able to be victorious against the Witch Realm Scourge Raiders, but I think it's going to be a consolation prize at best, because I would certainly back Angmar going into these final phases of the fight. A few Alcarondas Legion left living. The Witches of Angmar are in there as well, probably out of ammunition at this point, I would imagine. 14 of them being committed forward. They're trying to push their way through, maybe trying to go after the Witches, although they're not really going to be able to do much with the Witch Realm Inquisitors buzzing around. Melee cavalry though they may be, they can still charge into a unit of infantry and do the business. There's still Black Numenorian units left alive in here, 1 or 2 of them, holding up this entire force. Yeah, and at this point Umbar need to pull themselves back into a defensive position and let their skirmishers do the business, because they're not going to be able to win this fight any other way. Nice armory over here. Still Thick Dick's Witchers, waiting for another opportunity to poke in and out and do some more vital damage. I suppose it's a good thing from a defensive point of view they didn't sort of entirely destroy a unit of Harbingers, but that will be cold comfort for the Black Numenorians here. And finally victorious against the spearmen that were still on this road over here, Angmar are going to be able to send forward their legions to try and conquer the town centre. That unit of Harbingers did take a couple of losses, to be fair, but nothing too vital. here, Witch Realm Inquisitors cycling back out. Corsair crossbows presumably out of ammunition, wielding their harpoons in melee. I think they actually have a very minor anti-cavalry bonus in melee. Not that you would notice it, because oftentimes when they get charged, obviously they get obliterated off that charge, but I think that's something they have. They certainly had it in .96, so that is worth mentioning. If you've got a unit of cavalry and it's just hanging out in melee with the Corsair crossbowmen, you might want to move them. That's true for any cavalry, really, but still. Here come the Alcarondas Legion. There are the Witches. I think the crossbows, well, you can see that, I don't know, this unit of Alcarondas Legion, I mean, to be fair, it will be able to do a lot of damage to these Angmar Marauders and Halberdiers. Quite how much success they're going to have, I'm not quite sure. They're quite fortunate that all of the lower tier units are on the front, so they will be able to get a few kills. Umbar certainly with their backs to the wall at this point, however. And I can only... yeah, there we go. I get back just in time to see. And that time it was the Harbingers getting absolutely fried by the Witches. And I'm really honestly quite surprised that... I mean, it is quite fortunate actually for the defenders that these buildings are not solid entities, because it means that they can... at least it looked like arrows were passing through them then. But the Witches here being used well, I'm sure that it will frustrate most people to see the defenders subjected to this sort of punishment. And I can say that if I were on the Umbar team, I'd not be impressed by this sort of thing. But, you know, it is what it is. It's a valid way to use them. Angmar Marauders and Snaga on the front line, albeit being put in their place by Alcarondas Legion. Yet more of the Angmar manpower going down. I think the catapult ammunition is too valuable to use frivolously at this point, but I mean, maybe they're panicked into using it, because if the Witches do hit the catapult, you know, it will be completely destroyed. Alcarondas Legion pulling off the front line now, trying to bring the front line a little bit closer to all their valuable skirmishers. Oof. Yeah, that there is another example of the Witches. And I mean, to be fair, what are the defenders going to do? There's 3 units of Witches on the field in the late game, which all still have ammunition. That was pretty much an entire unit of Rangers, only about 30 strong, but completely destroyed. I don't know. I mean, it's times like this where you do kind of feel as though the Witches are a little bit much. And I get that this is an RP and you can sort of buy your units beforehand, but maybe there is a case for saying there should be a hard limit on them. Because I fully agree that if there's just 1 or 2 units of them, they're easily dealt with. But when there's like 3 or 4, it's difficult to skirmish them down all at once. Especially in this sort of situation. But you could also say that the defenders have put themselves in this situation. Like, Angmar have made these gains legitimately throughout the entire game. And they are fully entitled to take advantage of them, as they will. Angmar are taking losses though, and I mean, it is worth saying that Angmar, they do have a lot of infantry left, but if they did just charge in, the catapult, rangers and crossbows would be able to do very substantial damage to them. Here come the Witches once more. The crossbows, however, are not targeting them, and that is another mark against the defenders, really. Like, you've already been grilled by the Witches several times. Like, they're going to go for the crossbows now, and the crossbows, having gone for Angmar Marauders instead of the Witches, are going to pay the ultimate price for that, really. They're going to go for them now, albeit maybe a little bit too late. Something that will probably be changed in the hotfix as well with regards to the Witches is the fact that their reload time is very short at this point in time, so they can fire and then fire again very quickly. I would imagine that is not going to be the case moving forward, and there is going to be more of a cap put on that. I do like the green fire effect though. That's a positive change for the Witches. The fast reloading is not necessarily the best idea, but the green fire is. If I were Angmar at this point, I would give Umbar an honourable end. I would commit forward all my infantry and move them in. I wouldn't force them to sort of be killed by me, slowly bleeding them out with my Witches, because it's a very frustrating thing to have happen to you. And so it's why often in this situation I will just commit everything forward and give the defenders a good, honest fight. Because I think, honestly, at this point, Angmar have got enough of an advantage in melee that they can win this. They still have 3 units of witches. I mean, even if you commit your own infantry forward, you can still use the witches. There are still Castamir's Rangers here. 2 units of Castamir's Rangers. Still some Harbingers as well. But I think overall the infantry power that Umbar have is entirely bound up in their units of Harbingers. And they're already on their last legs. Catapult getting some point-blank hits here into this little force for Umbar. Angmar, I should say. Umbar and Angmar are kind of similar in my defence. Still, patches of green fire. The Umbar catapult doing a good amount of damage there. I think it's a little bit too little too late, but I mean, who knows? I've seen stranger things happen. Angmar are a faction which are liable to rout if you can kill their leadership, but again, there are 3 units of which are on Blackguard at least. They have not yet committed forwards. Still more Blackwatch Legion as well, some Guardians of Khan Doom. Yeah, Angmar are very much in the ascendancy here. I think these witches are out of ammunition, which is why they've been committed forward to melee. In they go, the Blackwatch Legion. Castamir's Rangers, I mean, there's still some Harbingers further back. I can see why Umbar aren't committing forward more men, because I'd imagine that lurking around here, indeed, we can see Frodo moving forward his witches. Castamir's Rangers starting to fire now as well. The catapult getting another hit in there, doing horrendous damage to this initial Angmar wave. But I think the horrendous damage is going to be reciprocated in the opposite direction as well, and there we go. Almost the entirety of that Umbar front line dealt with. Forward come the Castamir's Rangers. They pulled out their blades at this point. Catapult once again shooting in at point blank, I think, Umbar at this point. Just trying to take down as many of the orcs as they can. And forward come the Harbingers. That catapult, to be fair, is going to end the game with quite a few kills at this point. The last few volleys have been highly productive. And indeed, there's a lot of routing Angmar troops. Some Castamir's Rangers as well. Still the Witchers moving in, but yeah, the brute strength of Angmar. Don't know why I keep making that particular mistake, but yeah, the brute strength of Angmar is going to be too much here. Umbar will be able to put up a valiant last stand, but it's not going to be enough here. You can see the Blackwatch Legion are going to be able to crush their way through the limited manpower that is remaining and get into the catapult, and then the rest of the infantry is going to be able to follow them in. More Blackwatch Legion, more pikes to consolidate their gains. The Witches are going to be able to get into position to maybe get another devastating volley. The green fire yet again right into the heart of what remains of the Umbar infantry. The pikes are on their way forward. No Witch Realm Blackguard, however. The Witch Realm Blackguard is going to end the game pretty much with 0 kills. The Witches, on the other hand, I mean, we'll be able to see how devastating the Witches were, because obviously we're seeing this from the Angmar perspective. Still a couple thousand frames left, so even in spite of this punishment, Umbar are going to be able to weather it to an extent. Going to be able to get in here, and to be fair, I mean, Angmar don't have all that much left. They do have quite a few elite units left alive in their Blackguard and their Witchers, but their armies are, you know, not looking good in terms of their numbers. I mean, it's going to be a close battle, just over the 10% mark, but even so, it does go to show how good Angmar can be on the attack. Aggressive, powerful, the Harbingers, they're trying to form up a sort of a little Helm's Deep type situation around their Rangers, but I think it's a little bit too late for that at this point. The Blackwatch Legion are already in and amongst them, introducing them to the business end of their maces. There goes another Umbar general. Morale, of course, is not really too much of an issue when you're the defenders, although they will have to route through Angmar at this point to get back to the town centre. Harbingers still fighting hard. I really like the new look for the Harbingers. Small little aesthetic changes really do wonders for them, and the fact that they're now a much more useful classification of unit in the two-handed swordsman. They never really were all that useful as dual wielders. Forward come the Blackguard, although there are going to be no kills left for them to take advantage of. And this is pretty much the entirety of the Angmar army at this point, congregating in and around the town centre. It's a decent force that's left. Quite a few units of Blackguard, Blackwatch Legion and pikemen, but they have still taken a lot of losses. Angmar's armies are big though, so they can most certainly weather those casualties better than most. The Rangers are going to stand and fight to the bitter end. AP on the Blackwatch Legion, not necessarily the most useful thing in this situation. There's still those Harbingers who will stand and fight to the bitter end. There's a few crossbowmen as well who probably won't. They are but Corsairs, fighting alongside their black Numenorean overlords. A kill there on an Angmar officer. There's actually an Angmar general. So the Blackguard will get a couple of kills, but not all that many, as the Orc pikes continue to move their way into position. And this fight was far better than the last one, so I do hope that this makes up for the episode that turned into a rant, unfortunately. It has been a rather frustrating time. My relationship with this game has certainly not been improved by my last week's experience with it. Yeah, hopefully we can turn over a new leaf and move forwards. I can't help but feel as though the new morale system, where your armies can crumble more easily, makes it a little bit more difficult to get a close and competitive game, because it's much more likely that an army is going to fall apart. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, it just makes it a little bit more difficult to get a good close game. And we're continuing to just column formation, smash into the defensive positions. The balance of forces is evenly matched. And if you believe that, you'll believe anything. Final 700 frames. I'm not really sure what they have left. I think it's just a few units which are difficult to kill right in and amongst everything here, so we'll go up to ×2 speed. Yeah, it's a few Harbingers that are in and amongst all of these units over here. Well played by Angmar, though, a very good assault. And honestly, when you're in this sort of situation, if you're the attackers and you outnumber the defenders on a map which doesn't overly favour the defenders, it must be said, as long as you play a good game, chances are you're going to win. And the defenders didn't really do an awful lot wrong. To be fair, they put up good defences. I feel as though very early they maybe should have been a little bit more prepared for a quick Angmar rush, as Eothad and BMK indulged in. But other than that, I can't really think of too much they did wrong. Maximus Decimus Meridius getting the least amount of kills, but again, he was more the supporting army, whereas Engsfitz and Tundra's Fox were on the front line right from the off. All the Angmar armies getting a relatively similar amount of kills, a decent spread there. And let's see what did the damage, as if we didn't already know. A decent spread of kills, but of course the Witchers getting nearly 400 from Thick Dick, which is unsurprising. Frodo, I would imagine that's similar. Well, actually, no, less kills, so 151 is still a fairly decent amount considering it was in the final stand. Blackwatch Legion doing very well, and I would say as well that this is a good example of a mass push being used right. They didn't use it right from the off. Well, they kind of did on one of the gates, but they used it in areas where they knew it would be effective. They didn't just throw them into sort of really solid Umbar defences where they would just be stopped dead in their tracks and killed. The Blackwatch Legion were used very nicely, and the Trolls were also used pretty well. They all died in the end, the Trolls, but they still did their job. They still were committed forward mostly into situations where they were able to be effective. Eothad here, the player who sent me the replay, his Trolls were the most effective units in his army in terms of kills. The rest of his forces, mixed sort of success. The Witchers doing okay. So yeah, all of the attacking armies had Witchers, and I think that shone through in the kills. All of them got at least 100 kills. One of them got nearly 400, showing how effective they can be. It's very difficult to deal with 4 units of Witchers as well. Even if you've got Rangers and crossbows trained on them, you can't really hit all of them all at once. And obviously, as the defenders, if you take the losses that the Witchers are able to inflict on you, it's always going to be an uphill battle from there. So I think it was more the fact that Angmar just played well. I think Umbar did what they could, but it was always going to be difficult against a very, very effective attacking faction in the Witch Realm. So yeah, big thank you to Eothad for sending this one in. Obviously, it was quite a while ago that you did send it in, but I do appreciate it nonetheless. As for an MVP, I suppose you have to give it to Thick Dick, because he used his witches to such a devastating extent that there was no recovering for Umbar. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one. It was certainly much better than the last one, and hopefully we can turn over a new leaf, as I said, and move on from that. I think the next battle I'm going to show is going to be an extremely long one on Tol Falas, I believe. We shall see. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.